Welcome to another episode of The Creativity Project, where we chat with all types of creatives from all over the world. Today we're sitting down with New York's next up-and-coming indie hip-hop artist and screen composer, but most importantly, my buddy, Ben Maffa. Along with working on commercial projects, Ben performs as a solo artist in New York and Boston, including at the Pianos, the Delancey, the Middle East, Brooklyn Music Kitchen, and the Royale. His mission is to build community through music and to help people discover their unique form of meditation. Ben, how are you doing today?
Thrilled to be here. I've had a great day today. I was on the tennis court earlier today and did some scheming for my next show. And I put these sunglasses on and I'm feeling like a boss right now.
I like the sunglasses. For those of you who can't see, it looks like an alien or like some sort of like insect. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm into aliens right now.
Nice.
I'm reading about aliens right now.
What are you reading?
Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. Very good book.
At that. He reads, he plays tennis, he performs, he writes.
What's not
the
to
whole
love?
Package. What's not to love? All right, so Ben, first I wanna introduce the audience to sort of how we met each other. I remember the first time seeing you in person.
I don't.
You know, it was we were at
actually. I think I do. Actually, I think we were behind Joel's apartment at Brandeis.
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember that.
Joel's like, "Yo, this is Ben Maffa. He's the guy who can freestyle like a boss." I'm like, "All right, let me hear it." And I was impressed. I was like, "All right, this guy's no joke.
Oh, nice.
He's quick. He can think."
Interesting. That's not that for me. That's not the beginning of our relationship. The beginning of our relationship is when I was working on the mix for an a cappella track for my a cappella group.
Oh yeah.
Which was steered by Joel Stenhouse. Joel, the boy, guitar player.
Yeah.
We owe Joel everything we have.
Yeah, I talk about Joel. I think I've talked about him on every episode so far, but you guys haven't met him yet. But you will soon. He's cool.
we owe Joel everything. But
yeah,
I put in the work on this mix, and then I'm thinking about the master. I'm thinking I could do a master, but I don't even really know how to do that. So Joel recommended the boy Ben Hudak, gave me the contact information, and then we started emailing, started chatting. I could tell this guy was the real deal.
Which is funny because at that point in time, I was very much not the real deal. It's arguable if I'm the real deal now, but
you faked it until you made it.
Yeah, that's what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
But the work speaks for itself, right?
Mm-hmm. It's well done. It's a banger. It's called Heavenly Father by Brandeis starring artists. Go check it out.
On Spotify now, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did this track for your a cappella group. At the same time, I was in a college a cappella group. I feel like that's something we can relate on a little bit, but we've never really talked about it. Mm-hmm. For me, that was like an embarrassing moment of my time when I tell people like, yeah, I was in college a cappella. It was fun though. It was really great. But how was your experience?
It's the opposite
starving
for me.
artists?
I get nothing but respect from being in a cappella. I tell them I was a bass, and I don't know, maybe basses get certain amounts of respect. But I was in a lot of a cappella groups because I was in high school a cappella. Shout out to Rock Paper Scissors, Lexington High School, Massachusetts. And then I went to Skidmore College, and I was in the Drastic Measures phenomenal group. And then I transferred to Brandeis, and then I was in the Brandeis Starving Artists. And all of those experiences were wonderful. Nothing but positive things to say. Brandeis Starving Artists, very talented group. I was a bass in, I think, all the groups I was in. Soloed a little here and there. Didn't love soloing. I got a little too tight on stage.
Funny enough. And now all you do is solo.
I know. It's kind of funny. But, I mean, I love the camaraderie and learning things together, and then there's kind of the evolution of people into new roles, and I think that's very good. for the time being, and also I've learned it relates to everything in life. So
Yeah, and of course, every group is different. I loved the group that I was in, but I could definitely feel a little bit of like the stereotypical, like drama sort of part of things.
yeah, a little Pitch Perfecty.
A little Pitch Perfecty, a little bit.
I was able to steer clear of that somehow. I think I was.
Or maybe you just had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, that sometimes ignorance is bliss.
I feel like after Pitch Perfect came out, it like definitely popularized acapella, but also gave it a little bit of like a weird connotation. But what I really like about it is that it's the perfect statement, or the perfect proof that you don't need money or fancy equipment or really anything to make music and to make a really full orchestrated sound. You just need a few people who can sing, right?
Did Pitch Perfect say that? I guess Pitch Perfect did say that.
Well, no, I said that, but
okay, I thought you were saying Pitch Perfect said that.
No,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. But you know what I like even better than acapella, actually? Barbershop quartets.
Oh, interesting.
That's like the OG.
Interesting. Yeah. I do think there's something about voice that is so interesting and enticing. Sometimes I'm just like, I only want to hear voice right now. Because sometimes I listen to acapella, and I think there's some like relatability we have with it, and there's like a comfort to our ears when we hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that's unique about acapella.
That's why
we gravitate towards the voice too, and other songs.
Exactly. It's something that we hear all day, every day, even if we're not listening to music or acapella.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, before we really, dive into things, I wanted to talk a little bit about your upcoming show, because the way you explained it sounds really interesting. It sounds really weird and unique and fun, and it sounds like it's a combination between a bunch of different art forms.
That's right.
So what can we expect from the show?
So the show is called Human Live at Gymnopédie. And then under that, if you would see like the flyer underneath it, it would say 6 bodies, 1 mind. So what this show is it's kind of an innovative art form. There's going to be music and dance and theater elements. So it's kind of a combination of these 3 things. So on stage there are going to be 3 dancers and 3 instrumentalists, me being one of them. Hence the 6 bodies. And we are going to portray 1 mind. So this is a spin-off of my last album called Human. And these 6 different perspectives played through instruments and through dance are going to combine to make my perspective of
That's so
Human,
cool.
The last album. That's right. And there's also going to be a lighting and set design element. So I've yet to experiment with that, but that's going to be more the theatrical thing.
So cool. So some music, some dance, some theater, some visual art with the lights and the stage. Who are the other instrumentalists, or what are they playing?
Yeah, so it's I am the singer / rapper and composer. Mm-hmm. Joel Stenhouse is the guitar player.
Nice.
Aiden Fisher Brown is the pianist. And then the dancers are Augie Sherman, dancer / choreographer, Lydia Kelly, dancer / choreographer, and Rachel Lieblein Yerbala, dancer / choreographer.
Awesome.
And then lighting, Lauren Comer, lighting / set design / stage manager. And then we got Ben Hudak, the boy, who's going to be sound engineer / mixer.
Wow. That last guy sounds pretty cool.
It's a good team.
So I like this idea with combining a bunch of different art forms, which is something I love the idea of, and I try to do in real life. What else? I mean, you're a little bit of a jack of all trades, right? What do you do other than music composing and singing?
So I'm a tennis coach. So
Tennis coach.
I coach tennis and play a little tennis too. I have a big tournament on Saturday, actually.
That you're playing in?
I'm playing, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So yeah, it's a fundraiser tournament, but there's prize money, so watch out.
So you can see Ben perform both at live music venues and on the tennis court.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, so tennis, and then I also coach. I coach at a school, and I coach adults at this club. Other than that, creatively, I do some writing. So I'm kind of slowly working on turning my thesis that I wrote at Brandeis University into a book, kind of like a cognitive psych / self-help book.
Interesting. And so what's that about?
It's called Articulation, Between the Lines of Language and Art. So it's kind of about, it's about how the way we speak and write and communicate can reflect who we are, and the role that instinct plays in the way we communicate, and what are the most effective ways to communicate, and how is language limiting. So it's a mix of not the content that we're saying, not the even like the art, not even the album, but the process of how we're speaking, or the process of how we're making art, and how that reflects who we are.
Interesting. No, you reminded me of something I've been thinking about lately, which is I'm here in Colombia, right? So of course there's been a lot of Spanish and actually a lot of French, because I've been hanging out at like some hostels and meeting people, and I've just been thinking a lot about different languages and how some languages are better at communicating certain things.
Mm-hmm.
For example, English is very passive. You'd say, "Hey, can you grab me a coffee?"
Mm-hmm.
Or "Can you go downstairs?" You ask a question. But then Spanish is very imperative, where it's not rude to say, "Go downstairs, pick this up, grab me a coffee." Well, maybe grab me a coffee is a little bit rude, but it's all a way of expressing a thought or an idea that you have in your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And since we aren't telepathic yet, hopefully soon, that would be pretty cool. But since we're not telepathic yet, the best way of showing somebody else an idea, or like a little snapshot of the inside of our brain, is by making these weird sounds with our mouths that we've assigned meaning to, which is just a crazy idea. But while language and maybe photography even can, or painting or drawing can express this idea and really, well, really paint a picture, but paint a picture with words or paint a picture with literally paint, I feel like music does a lot better job expressing emotion. Not so much how something looks like, but how something feels. You know what I mean?
I'm into that. Yeah, I like that. I mean, good music.
Yeah. I guess we're talking about good music, good paintings.
We're definitely we're talking about like the top segment of music, because I think of music as like 4 different tiers. There's like bad, there's listenable, there's enjoyable, and then there's feeling. And if you can get to feeling, then you're doing your job right. So that's the tier we're focused on right now.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people, I don't, this pains me to say a little bit, but I would maybe make the argument that some music is inherently bad, which sounds so pretentious, but there's some stuff that's out there that's fun, and if you like listening to it, great. Like, who am I to tell you no? But I do think that there's some stuff that's just not based off of a strong understanding of how music works, and then there's some stuff that really is that's made by very skilled people who know a lot about like the science of the music theory, right? Mm-hmm. And but I also think that doesn't always line up with what I like to listen to. For example, Jacob Collier, I think, is like, he has the best understanding of music and theory and harmony better than anybody else in the world alive right now. I would make that argument. Mm-hmm. But I don't listen to his music. I mean, every once in a while, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's too much for me. I just don't. I can admit that it's excellent, but it's not really my cup of tea. At the same time, a group that I do like to listen to a lot, who I think are inherently just like kind of bad musicians, is the Beastie Boys. I love the Beastie Boys, man, but that's bad music, right? Do you have any groups like that?
I agree with both of those things.
Any like guilty pleasure groups?
I mean, for sure. I mean, it just depends what you think as guilty pleasure, like, because you could think about Katy Perry or like Kesha come to mind for me.
Well, wait. Katy Perry's good though.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's not like you can't really say it out of hate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a great answer off the top of my head, but I do have some, definitely.
You know who I really like and have been listening to a lot the past year, actually. You think of this person, you think of a Disney artist, but man, her music is insane, and that's Demi Lovato, right? Like, I always grew up watching her on Sunny with a Chance and like on those Disney shows, but she put out a new album called I forget what it's called actually, but she just put out a new album that's very much pop punk and reminds me of old Demi Lovato, right, from Camp Rock days, dude. Oh my God! Every track on this album is crazy. It's crazy fun to listen to.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't handle that, but I like other Katy Perry stuff.
Listen, Demi Lovato.
I mean, right? Demi Lovato. I like other. I like other Demi Lovato stuff. I can't handle this one though.
You don't like it?
No.
What?
You've
listened to it through?
Yeah.
Interesting. But your stuff is intense, dude.
It's intense, but this is like it's too punk for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a sucker for pop punk. What's it called? Substance. Substance is like my favorite song in the album, just because of the hits. They do a lot of they do big crashes on the 2. Only one looking for so cool. I love that, and they're so in sync. The mix is garbage though. It's frustrating to listen to. They like compress the drums way too hard, and all you can hear is just like crashing in cymbals. And
you don't think that was intentional?
Maybe, but it's too much. I still think it's too much.
I'm always wondering if the famous artists just have the security net of having good mixes, which is why they like are consistent.
But this is an example of an album that I think is really good, or that at least that I really like, but that doesn't have a good mix.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But definitely, I do think that about that a lot. Like, are these people famous because they're good musicians, or is it because they got lucky, they got picked up, and they have a really great team of experts behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this for a long time. I feel like part of me is like, if you have 2 years of being in the zone and like good, you don't really need to have talent after that, because you'll have the team after that and you built the brand enough. I don't know. That's one theory. But you can't stay at the top like that.
Yeah, no. Well, what I like about your music...
you can stay at the top like that. I mean, look at Kanye.
People do it.
Yeah, Kanye does that. A lot of people do that. They just...
You think he's losing it?
No,
well,
I mean, like...
He's definitely losing it mentally, but...
No, I more mean
in
terms of transitioning from the artist to the manager. Like, because artists, they can be really good and then write most of their stuff, but then as they go up, they can start to oversee the process more. They can see the bigger picture. They want to make influence in other ways. They want to combine art that they do with other art forms, and they need to be a little less hands-on in terms of the music. Like, the music becomes a smaller part of what they're standing for. So then they start hiring, blah, 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 start working with other people, which is not a bad thing. It's just...
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah,
I like
great.
thinking of it... I like business. I think entrepreneurship is really cool, and I mean, an artist is a business. Ben Maffa is a business. Yeah. There's no denying that. And just like, for example, with my podcasts that I make, I'm a freelance podcast producer. Anybody who's listening and wants a podcast, it's just like how I'm starting this on my own. But as the work is coming in, I call it stacking up. Right? So I'm stacking people underneath me. Okay, I've been doing all of this editing and mixing. Now that I'm overseeing the full project, I'm focusing on sales and marketing and hosting and writing the scripts and doing all this. You're able to outsource some of the legwork by stacking people underneath, which is what I see artists do a lot too.
Exactly. I was just thinking about that.
Okay, let's just revisit. Writing music and composing, and you do that for commercials and
I have
for TV, right?
Yeah,
every once in a while.
I have, but I'm not currently focused on that. But I did an internship with that, and I've done some coursework, and I would consider myself a screen composer. And some of the work I make and the work that's in my upcoming show is what I would classify as screen composition.
What is screen composing?
It's music that's made for TV, commercial, advertisement, film, video games. Okay.
Sometimes I'll listen to a song and think, this is cool, but who's going to sit down and listen to this? And a lot of us experimental music is like that, right? Where the big modular synthesizers, and it's all really cool, but I get lost in this thought process, which is like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not listenable. And I'm realizing, or sort of reminding myself lately, that not all music is meant to be listened to sitting down on a couch next to a record player, with headphones on, and that's the only thing you're doing. Actually, probably most of the music I listen to, because for some reason I don't listen to music when I'm walking down the street, and I don't listen to music when I'm working, because when I'm working, I have to be listening to the mix, right? But I think, like, do I not listen to music? Like, no, 99% of the stuff we're listening to is in the background with on like TV shows, commercials, podcasts.
That's true.
Even like playing in the cafe when you're not thinking about it. So much music is not necessarily meant to be listened to at a live show, the way that your music is. But that doesn't mean it's not good.
Right. I wouldn't say so much is not meant to. I think that's the wrong wording. I think it is meant to, but it becomes part of the background. Just because of our focus is, like, how much time do we have in a day to focus on music solely? It becomes a companion.
I'll have these fun sort of like improv recording. Actually, you know what I did like a month ago is there's this studio in Boston that I ended up. They rent out studio space, but there's no audio engineer, right? So you're paying for the place, not the person. So you got to tech the whole thing, but that's no problem because we were all in our high school radio and TV station. We've got as many hands as we need, and so I booked this enormous studio really for 4 hours, and brought in Joel on guitar, Victor Roman on drums. Oh, Victor, we got to have Victor on the show for sure. He's a beast. Amazing drummer, And then we got Max Bakalos and Michael Dow to help us out with some of the teching and filming and stuff. And we just had this sort of spontaneous improv recording session. We just hit record, and we had all the mics and instruments set up. We just basically ran around and like did all this weird stuff. And at the end, we walked out of this session. We finished 40 minutes early, and we have about 21 songs. As well, but it depends. Like, what do you consider a song? Is a little guitar or piano interlude? Because Joel was sitting at a whirly for most of the time. Vic was on drums. I was sort of bouncing around between bass, production, and then also flute, right? And some of the songs don't have a melody. Some of it is all harmony with the whirly and drums and bass. And something without a melody, I feel like, is really hard to listen to on its own. But I keep reminding myself, these songs don't have to all be completely fleshed out. They don't all have to have a melody. They don't have to have vocals or words necessarily. If I'm not asking people to listen to this live, which I wouldn't because there's not enough there, it could maybe function as a podcast intro, or in the background for the B-roll in a YouTube vlog or something like that.
Interesting.
But there's so many different kinds of music for all these different purposes. It's hard to get lost in one mindset.
I mean, that's a fascinating point. Making something and then deciding its intention after the fact, placing it after the fact in something. Like, I think that is even potentially more true artistry, because then you're starting to see the big picture in things, and you're able to curate something out of the raw materials you have. And as long as things are raw and they can adapt to a purposeful environment, then that's good music right there.
Yeah, and it's all about, too, I think, where you get started. Like, where does the inspiration come from? I'm just going to tell a quick story. Here in Bogota, there's
an earthquake.
There was an earthquake today, and that was really scary. And I thought that we'd have to cancel this episode, but I'm really glad we didn't. But I was walking down the street one day, and I turned into this suit store. And there's just all it's tiny, it's family run. It's just this older guy and like his two sons. And it turns out that they are all tailors, and they make these suits right in the back of the shop, which is crazy. Like, you can't find that with a designer suit. And anyway, I ended up working with them to commission a suit. And of course, because of the unfair exchange rate, you don't have to pay $1 million like you would for a bespoke suit in the United States, right? So first of all, I'll put the link to this, or the address or whatever, to this shop, so you guys, if you ever find yourself in Bogota, Colombia, you can get a really sick suit for like $200. But as researching these suits, I start to realize, like, where does the inspiration for these come from? Because with the more mass-produced suit, there's a clear-cut pattern, and it's meant to fit sort of the mass market. It's meant to be as close to a one-size-fits-all as you possibly can. With the really artistic suits made by real craftsmen, they get inspiration from the fabric. They see this fabric, they fall in love with it, and they start to imagine, and they get inspiration by the person that they're making it for. What does their body shape look like? And they might even create a custom pattern to elongate parts of the body that you feel maybe are too short, or do the opposite, or make you look bulkier or slimmer. And I think that's really neat. I fall into a trap making music where I'll have a preconceived idea of what it should be and try to fit everything in there. I'll say, I want to make a song for the masses that is fun, fast pop punk.
Bad.
Well, agree to disagree. But what I think really is more effective in making something great and something with a lot of artistic integrity is finding inspiration, for example, in a new instrument. Right? maybe, I love walking around the markets here and finding different flutes and different, stringed instruments that I've never seen before and I don't know how to play. Messing around with them, you can get inspiration. But Ben, where's your starting point? Where's your inspiration coming from with most of these songs? Is there a system?
No, but I'd say first the new instrument thing is really good, and I need to push myself to do that. Like, for me, it's not so much instruments; it's more so machines. Like, I have this new vocal transformer that I've used a lot on the new album, and those things are like pushing me to learn and experiment, and in a way you kind of need a new ingredient to stir up the recipe. Like, it's the same thing as the way life works with business and tech. Life goes on, and then there's new technology, and that influences business, and then that influences money, and then the world is different now. Those things kind of push each other up. So the new instrument thing is good. New sounds, like I'll be downloading new sound banks. I recently thought of this potential plan to do 2-week free trials of as many sounds and plugins as I can, because then that forces me to have 2 weeks with it, learn a lot, and then I move into a new sound, and then I learn that new sounds, and then boom, 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 boom. Like, that's a pretty easy way to stay new, stay fresh.
That's another great analogy that you mentioned was cooking. And it's the idea, it's the overall, it exists with cooking and soup making and businesses. It's starting with the raw ingredient, getting inspired by the fresh summer tomatoes that are at the grocery store only 2 weeks per year, and then making, I don't know, a BLT with it. That's something that can really highlight that fresh ingredient. Just like finding a new instrument or a new vocoder or synthesizer or plugin can inspire these sounds, but starting with that weird or just like chef kiss raw material, rather than making the whole thing with the end goal to be a banger or to be a masterpiece painting or a Michelin star dish, to start really with the beginning. I love that, man. I love experimenting with that sort of stuff.
And it's even like the fanciest restaurants will sometimes just have there'll be a double Michelin, and they just serve you a carrot. Just because the carrot is the highest caliber in its purest form. Yeah. So maybe that can equate to how some of the best songs are the simplest, or how just like having one element shine is kind of the way to go. I don't know. It's an interesting analogy.
Yeah. I think it's not a coincidence that we say cooking up in the stew. There's music, composing, and cooking have a lot of similarities.
They do.
But that's also sort of getting back into what we were talking before with like the value of being a well-rounded artist and having interests in cooking and music and dance and writing, because they all combine. And even when we don't think, how's cutting a tomato going to help me make better music? Well, okay, maybe that's a bad example, but they all share skills. And I found myself a lot of times in some sort of mindset that I get stuck in. For example, like this idea of like end goal versus inspiration. But I can pull from a past experience. No, I was knitting that bag and I made this mistake because I was only thinking about this one thing. But what I should really do is slow down and take my time, and then the song comes out better.
Yeah.
So not only just combining stuff in mixed media like you are with like the dancing and the music and the theater, but also having these soft skills in the back of your mind that does impact what you're doing.
Right. And those soft things can sometimes inspire each other. Like, I'm getting a lot of ideas from this book I'm reading. I just got the outfit for my show from like this one passage of the book I'm reading. Yeah, stuff like that can just pop out to you and overlap, as you said.
So you had mentioned to me a while ago about how tennis and music and art combine for you in an interesting way. And I told you to stop talking, to save it for the podcast. So I actually don't know what what your answer to this is. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious on your thoughts about finding art in tennis.
I think there are two lanes to look at it. There's the tennis coaching I'm doing, and then there's the tennis playing I'm doing. And I think in both ways you could call it an artist, call it artistry, call it an artistry, mm-hmm. call it artistry.
Okay.
Right? Call it an art, call it artistry.
Call it an art, yeah, call it artistry.
There's definitely the art of coaching or / teaching anything, I think.
Yeah.
You're interacting with an audience, you're coming up with strategies, and if it's customized in any way, meaning good teaching, it's going to need to be creative, and you're gonna have to push the mind to challenge the person the right amount and to teach something that's in their range of teaching. You want them to have 80% success rate when they're doing exercises. You have to combine all those criteria and kind of whip up a solution. And that's art right there.
How did you learn or get into teaching?
So when I was in high school, there were a few people that wanted me to coach them privately, like younger kids, maybe like they were middle schoolers and I was in high school and I was playing top on the team, and it was not really like a tough thing to do. I could just go out with a bucket of balls and feed some things and show them how to hit basic shots. And then that kind of easily fell into doing it more for real. I coached at this club in Bedford, Massachusetts, and then my brother was coaching at this club in Brookline. So then I started coaching there, and then when I came to the city, it kind of just kept fumbling into other things. I've probably coached at 8 different clubs at this point.
So you've sort of figured out how to coach rather than somebody teaching you how to coach.
Yes, 100%.
It's funny. It gets
that's a good conversation right there.
Yeah,
what's better?
Yeah. And the idea of like teaching how to teach, I think, is funny. And then is there somebody who teaches how to teach how to teach?
Right.
How far does it go up?
I have a friend, and her parents are coaches of life coaches.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's.
But this is an interesting conversation of whether it's better to teach yourself something, or whether it's how to teach her something, or learn how to do it. I mean,
yeah, and it's. I think there's a separation between those the people who learn how to teach and then
people that do it on their own.
Yeah, there's a bit of a separation because doing some skill is a different ability than teaching that skill. Like, the best guitarists in the world aren't necessarily the best guitar teachers in the world. Mm-hmm. And some of the best guitar teachers maybe aren't insane guitarists, but they just know how to teach the process, and they've refined the technique and the strategy of here's what your first 5 years on guitar looks like. Mm-hmm. Very different skills.
Definitely very different skills.
But what's better? And I know that, like, high school teachers, they have to be taught how to teach. They can't just be a mathematician. Crazy that mathematician is a job. I didn't know that, but it is.
It's gotta be, yeah.
But they have to learn how to teach math. Yeah. In my mind, a mathematician is just like sitting in a room with one of those big calculators from like the 60s and like...
Yeah.
That's just what they do all day. I don't think I know what a mathematician is.
I mean, I think I think there's a lot of value to teaching yourself how to do things. I would say, I don't know, this is tough to flush out, but I'd say ideally you want to, no, I think it varies too much. I wanted to say something like if you're a teacher and you're trying to get good at teaching, or if you're learning music, no, it varies too much. I was going to be like, it's good to teach yourself like 80% and then formally learn 20%, but that's so not, that's not going to be true across all art forms. Like, I think it's going to vary for everything. Or people. That's true.
Like, I very much enjoy like trying to figure things out and learning from trial and error. But Maria, my girlfriend, for example, is the exact opposite. She likes to be given instructions and then execute those instructions perfectly. Which is, I mean, we're just complete opposites that way. We're similar in other ways.
I think maybe the point is whatever process you take to learn is going to influence your performance.
Oh, absolutely. And the guys who learn by just figuring stuff out always seem to have a much more unique and impressive style than the people who are classically trained, right?
Right.
But the people who are classically trained, in my experience, tend to have a better understanding of how it works, of the mechanics of music, the Jacob Collier type.
Right. I agree.
But I don't know. I think if I had to be on one side or the other, I would rather have a worse understanding of the mechanics, but do more weird. Okay. You know what I mean? What about you?
I would agree with that. I mean, I'd say that's where I'm at. I think I learned most of the music that I'm making on my own, and I had like a very small percentage of formal stuff, even though I did do the classical stuff back in the day, but I don't think that relates too much.
What instrument, other than voice, what instrument do you main? Piano?
Piano. I played piano for maybe 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Which is hands down, objectively, the best instrument to learn the mechanics of music and music theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that helped, no question. It's kind of hard to see how much it helped, because what I'm doing is so not in that realm, but yeah, that definitely had influence.
I'll sometimes get caught up when I'm writing music that a chord progression or a melody isn't complex or musically intricate enough to be interesting, and that if I'm just using, 1 6 4 5 chords or whatever, then it's not good enough because it's not unique enough and it's not special. And I forget that there's ways of making stuff unique and fun that's not music theoretically complex, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
like which sounds you use.
Yeah, you could argue that's everything I do. You could argue that's production.
No, but your songs are musically intricate. I think the production shines out more, but it's got both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, and then that is focusing on, are you focusing on more like the pre-production, the songwriting, and the more theoretical stuff, or are you focusing on more the actual, like, tangible sounds in the production itself? Which is, I have more fun focusing on the production, and that's why I like working with great songwriters. Like Karima. Do you know Karima?
I know her, but we've never met.
She's great, and she's an insane songwriter.
Okay.
And so partnering with her is great because I don't have to worry about the songwriting. She doesn't have to worry as much about the production.
I think that varies from genre to genre what the focus is. Like, singer-songwriter is going to have the focus on the song and the writing, and then hip-hop is going to focus more on the sounds and the drum sounds, and country is going to focus more on sounding racist and all that stuff.
Literally, it's like country's gonna focus on being stupid.
Yeah, so I think different things shine in different genres, which is interesting.
So, Ben, you touched a little bit on your interest with writing and reading, and I know that in the past you've mentioned that you like to journal sometimes.
Yeah.
What do you journal about?
I would say in my journal, I do two things. I A, journal my thoughts slash feelings, and B, list my schedule that I've done since I last journaled. So I write out everything I did. And it's kind of a way to be like, okay, past, like, checking those off into the next, like, whatever, week or whatever it is. But, yeah, I thought that has some relevance to creativity and art because I'll find art through my journaling. Like, I'll learn things through my journaling, because it's a form of relaxation and thus meditation, and like kind of pushing yourself back. And it's so important to push yourself back because then you're seeing things in a new perspective, and once you're getting into a new perspective is kind of when you learn the most. So I'll come out of journaling sessions and I'll have some idea, and that can influence things. It's kind of similar to, like, I was an English major, and we were taught. I forget what the phrase is. There's some phrase, but like you learn from writing. Like if you're just writing things, you'll eventually come to a conclusion. And I do understand that now. It's like writing will draw out greater understanding because you'll kind of write around the truth, or you'll be writing towards something, or you're circling an idea. Like there's some kind of path to getting things down.
And of course, if you can free write or word vomit, just get everything that's in your head out onto the paper, it makes it a lot easier to then go back and refine later. It reminds me of the design thinking mindset in business school, right? Where the first step is to brainstorm, and it's called converging and diverging,
yes.
right? Diverging and converging. Yes, in that order. So first you're going out and you're trying to list as many ideas as you possibly can until you have everything in front of you. Now you just have to sort through it. But then once you're at that peak, you don't have to worry about writing anything new. All you have to do is figuring out like how to sort of consolidate all of it, which is nice because when you're trying to create something and also refine something at the same time, they can sort of work against each other sometimes. You might have an idea, but you don't put it down because you're trying to refine at the same time and you think the idea is silly, but maybe you need a silly idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have this process in both music and writing. So I guess you could call me an engineer.
Do you free write? Like I'm trying to for myself separately, I've been trying to make a little songwriting strategy because when I haven't been writing music lately because I felt like it's not good enough and because I'll get discouraged, and I'm trying to refine and create at the same time, right? Which is not a good idea.
Right.
I've been thinking that maybe a good technique would be to free write as much as I can, and then just keep reducing and simmering it down and trimming the fat and boiling off all the water until it's just. Do you like all those cooking analogies there? Until it's just a few stanzas, a little poem, which I can then add music to.
Yeah, I do like that idea.
Do you do something like that?
Let me say something first, which is back to the brainstorming thing. I just want to get this off for some reason. But brainstorming, I've taken to, I think brainstorming is so great. And I've taken that, and those elements of writing and music, but also just in general, things in life. Like, even if I'm going on vacation, I'm with a friend, and we're trying to map out what the plan is for the next 3 days. We got to start with the brainstorm. I'm like the person that's like, all right, let's brainstorm. Let's take 2 minutes, write everything down. If I'm coaching my tennis team, I'm like, okay, kids, let's take 2 minutes, yell everything out. We're going to write it all down. I'm a big connoisseur of brainstorming. If you're out there, keep pushing these methods that we learn in elementary school. Crucial. Shout out to Miss McMahon. Okay. So,
thank you, Miss McMahon.
Okay, now we're back to boiling things down. Yes, I do think it's good to try to get as much raw material as you can. I think the new instruments thing is good. Like, sometimes the best thing to do is just, I mean, similar to your 4-hour session with Joel. Like, you can just click record and see what material comes out. And if you need to listen back to, like, I mean, usually I'll be listening back to maybe like 20 minutes of takes, sometimes 30 minutes of various things. That's like good. Like, you want to be listening back to that.
Yeah, and that session with Joel was really just a brainstorm. We just hit record and did the musical equivalent of free writing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you don't need to do much after that. It's just the editing and the structure.
And that's crazy, because I thought like, okay, we'd get a nice bass, we get some ideas out, then we can go back, and then we can add more melodies, and we can add vocals, and we can write words, and this and that. And then after seeing how it came out, I'm like, actually, a lot of these are ready to go as is, with just a quick mix.
Yeah.
I'll send you some of these songs, because some of them are stupid, which is to be expected, but some of them are really cool. And we did, like, we played around with, like, a lot of weird effects and all live instruments, though.
Nice.
I'll bring you back. Well, maybe it should be a surprise, but I'll bring you back a cool instrument from Colombia that you can play around with. Get inspired.
Nice. I mean, another way that I work a lot is rarely do I start new projects. I usually don't start a Logic file and nothing is on it. Like, there's always some idea I had from somewhere else, or something, even if it's like something's in my music library and I was listening to this song and I start a track as a sample and I work from that. It's a lot easier for me to work from something that's already in motion than to start with nothing.
But that's so healthy, because I fall into this trap, but I know people who are worse at it than me, where all they do is start new projects, hour and a half, boom, bored, move on, and never finish anything, and nothing gets released. And for me, like, that just stresses me out so bad. Like, looking at my what's it called? Looking at the Finder, right? Because we're on Mac now, and seeing all of these unfinished Ableton sessions stresses me out, because I feel guilty when I start a project and don't finish it. Do you ever get that sort of guilt? Is that normal?
Well, I don't have the guilt as much, because I'm I
You
know
actually finish stuff.
I'm releasing my best material. So I know I have a reason for holding stuff back. And I feel like I do release a good amount of material, having released like 3 full-length albums. Mm-hmm. And I still feel like I could release more, but yeah, I mean, you gotta, if you want to, you gotta release stuff. And I think a key part of being your own artist is having the timeline down of when projects are done, because you're not going to be a good artist if you are rushing things. If you're spending a month on an album, it's not going to be good. Unless, I don't know, whatever. And you're not going to be a good artist if you are trying to be an artist and you are living in New York City and it's been 6 years and you haven't dropped a song yet. Like, only the tippity top guys like Frank Ocean can get away with not dropping things for 5 years, but finding your timeline, something that works, is very important.
It's fun that you brought this up, because this was something that I was already planning on asking you about, and it's something I like asking like all of the guests on this show, is when do you know something's done? When is it finished?
Right.
Because there's a saying I like, which is perfect is the enemy of finished, or is the enemy of good. And do you know Andrew Wong at all? He's a YouTube producer, music producer. He's awesome. Highly recommend Andrew Wong. Like one of the biggest inspirations for the reason he is the reason I bought my first MIDI controller and downloaded Ableton, is because he told me to.
Wow.
And but he puts out music like crazy, and he's always saying finished is better than perfect, and I couldn't agree more. But where's that line?
The line, I surprisingly haven't struggled with this line that much.
Really?
Because my workflow is very messy, and I like it that way. And once I start consolidating the things and organizing things and structuring things, I kind of know what is left.
Wait, sorry. Once you start, it cut out for a second. Once you start consolidating things.
Once I start consolidating things and structuring things and organizing things, piece by piece, it starts like almost healing in a way. And it becomes pretty clear to me what is left to accomplish. And then once I kind of accomplish those pieces, I've done my part. I mean, like, the last thing I need is just another set of ears, which is where Benjamin Hudak comes in and gives it that extra boom. But yeah, for me, it's kind of clear what the void, what the missing pieces are, because for me to get like the feeling out there, I feel pretty strong in that suit. And then once I start kind of piecing things together, I know the steps that are left. So I don't know, maybe that doesn't resonate with everyone.
It doesn't resonate with me. I wish it did, but
Yeah, tell me where your head's at when you're doing these.
Yeah, so I'll fall into the perfectionist trap, where I just want it to be so good that it's like it's almost like a selfish sense of pride, where it's like I want people to listen to it and go, he just made a perfect podcast. I love that, and he's the best, and whatever. And the thing is that would be cool if I could do that. But first of all, making something perfect is impossible. It's literally impossible and will never be. You'll never be satisfied if you're striving for perfection.
Well, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, but people do it. So, for example,
people strive for it.
People strive for it, and it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
And with these podcasts, for example, I told myself, like I had been rewind like a year ago. I wanted to make these perfect YouTube videos. I'm like, you know what? I've worked in the radio and TV station for 7 years in high school, and then I've been doing all this audio stuff and video and blah blah blah. Like I should have excellent production value. And I'm making this video, and I'm like, yeah, if I put the time into it, I'm sure that it could have really, really great production value. But what's more important, putting out one close to perfect video every 4 months, or putting out one great video every 2 weeks?
Yeah, for that
people
medium,
are hungry.
For that medium, the 2-week thing.
And it definitely depends. Yeah, so with these podcasts, I'm thinking I want to be putting these out every week, which has been tough because it's a lot of work that goes into it, especially when it's not just editing, but it's really the whole process from, calling up the hosts to uploading it to the platforms. And so, yeah, maybe there's a cough or an here or there. But that's paying for the more frequent upload.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta have some process that works for the turnaround time, the timeline.
Yeah, and then of course the more I think quality is a factor of expertise and time, right?
Say it again.
There's I'm like thinking of as a graph like this. There's on the y-axis is expertise, on the x-axis is time. So if the line is slanting down to make like a triangle like this, then if you are very experienced, you don't need a whole lot of time to reach this sort of good enough quality threshold. Or if you're very inexperienced but you have a lot of time, you can meet the line right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that.
And then the more you can start moving up this way across the quality threshold.
Yeah, I see that.
There should be some, I'm sure there's like some mathematical model or whatever for that or something, but
I see that.
But yeah, but that's important to remember is that, okay, the more videos you make or the more podcasts you make or the more music you put out there, the more experience you're gaining. And therefore, the less time it will take for the next project to be good enough to meet your quality standard.
Mm-hmm. And this is us taking out the whole, like, I mean, the obvious other element here is like audience. Like, we're interacting with an audience, and what we're like putting together a scheme or a package for them to consume. So, I mean, that's part of the 2 weeks, I think, for you. I mean, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this was purely thought of as an art form and you needed 4 months to spend on it and you wanted to make it the cleanest thing ever, maybe that would work. Maybe that would be sufficient for you. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's different depending on your intentions. If, like, are you making this specifically to be a piece of art that you yourself can admire? Mm-hmm. Which is great. Or are you making it... It's like cooking. We'll talk about cooking. It's like, are you preparing the perfect, delicious Michelin star meal? Okay, we can't say that. We can't say Michelin star. That's me. Are you preparing the perfect, most delicious meal for yourself, for you to sit down and eat? Or are you feeding a hungry crowd? There's a difference.
For sure. Yeah, there's a balance somewhere in there that you gotta reach as an artist.
And I like having.
I was gonna say, depending on your goals as an artist, there's a balance of where on that scale you are between your own desires and kind of what you're willing to do to reach your goals.
Yeah, and there's so many pros and cons for each, for making something for the art versus making something for the audience. That I enjoy having different creative outlets that I can focus on those two areas. So, for example, this show is obviously meant to be consumed by an audience. Yeah, it's a little bit so when I'm older I can look back at it and listen to these fun stories like the last episode of how Maria and I met and stuff like that. But it's made for the audience. It's meant to be consumed. On the other hand, I also like to knit. I would never try to sell something that I knit because it takes so long that if you're dividing the amount you're selling it for by the amount of time you put into it, it's nothing. It doesn't make sense. So for that reason, knitting and cooking for me are very intimate, and they're two things that I've decided I will never try to sell, but will always be something that I either make for myself or I make for the people I love, and it can be an expression of love, right?
Right.
Knitting. Nobody's knit me a sweater before, but if they did, for me that's the ultimate. That is the ultimate gift and expression of care.
Luckily, I have been knit a sweater by my sister, Anna Maffa. Thank you, Anna Maffa. Much love.
Super jealous. Yeah, I guess nobody loves me, but whatever.
But I think even with art, or podcasts, I mean, any type of thing that's releasing, the goal is to make the actual art for you and the marketing for the audience. That's kind of what's more targeted. The art is still staying yours because that's what makes you. That's what makes the art. But the packaging more so, the framework is what is fitting into an audience.
Yeah. Well, what I really love about your music, Ben, is that you make. I think it's fair to say you make hip hop. It's indie hip hop, right?
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
And there's rapping, but there's also a bunch of singing because you're a singer,
right?
But with most hip hop, you listen to it, and there's not much. It's hard to find heartfelt hip hop with real relatable content for people like me, at least. And to be able to listen to your music and experience this genre, but from a perspective that's talking about real feelings and thoughts and relationships, it's so much more captivating for me because I can actually relate to it. It's not just about doing drugs and partying or whatever. It's about real stuff that you're experiencing. And that's why you should all check out Maffa on Spotify, on YouTube, right? Your stuff's probably on YouTube, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, wherever you stream music. Also, make sure to check out Maffa Music Official. That's Maffa Music Official on Instagram. Anywhere else they can find you?
You can find me in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
All right. You can just walk around the streets.
Find me on the tennis courts. Find me on the tennis courts.
Yeah, you can find him at his tournament this Saturday. Dude, super nice talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Oh, thanks for coming, Ben. Remember to tune in next week. Thank you for following the show. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.